right, hello everyone. Let's look at another method for balancing chemical equations. I'm going to call this one the algebraic method. And so let's get started. All right, so I have my unbalanced chemical equation written right here. And the first thing I want to do is for each compound, I want to assign a variable. All right, so what does that mean? So Al2SO4, I'm going to give it the variable A. H2O is going to be B, AlOH3 is C, and then H2SO4 is D. All right. These variables are very important because they are going to become the coefficients for our balanced equation. So let's see how we get to that part. All right. So the next thing I want to do is I want to look at how many of each atom I have underneath each variable. All right. So let's look at what I'm doing here. So the first one I'm going to look at is aluminum. Okay. Now, aluminum, there are two aluminum atoms underneath A. So I'm going to call it 2A. I don't have any more on the reactant side. And if you remember, equations obey the law of conservation of mass. So what you have on the reactant side will equal what you have on the product side. So I use the equal sign here. And there's one aluminum under C. So for aluminum is 2A equals C. All right, SO4 I'm going to keep together because if you see, there's SO4 on the reactant side and there's SO4 on the product side. Okay, so with SO4, there's 3 under A. I don't have any more on the reactant side, and there's 1 under D. So for SO4, 3A equals D. 3 under A, 1 under D. Now I'm going to move on to the hydrogen. I have 2 under B, so it's going to be 2B equals, now look at the product side. I have 3 hydrogens under C, 2 hydrogens under D. I'm not going to combine them, but I am going to add them together. Let me show you what I'm talking about. 3C plus 2D. And then last, I have my oxygen. Okay, and that's 1 under B, and then it's 3 under C. 3C. All right, so at this point, I guess this is where the algebraic part comes from, coming up with our equations. So now I'm going to write my variables A, B, C, and D. Now, how many variables you have depends on how many compounds you have in your equation. Okay, if you have 5 compounds, you'll have 5 variables. If you have 3 compounds, you have 3 variables. All right. Now, to solve for your variables, you have to have one variable equal to the number 1. All right. Now, be careful when you're figuring this out. The biggest thing that I say is don't start out with fractions. And what I mean by that, if you say C is equal to 1, okay, and let me just put that right here. So 2A equals 1. If C is equal to 1, to find A, it's going to be a fraction. A is going to be 1/2. And I'm just not trying to start out with fractions, okay? So what I do is I'm like, if A is equal to 1, okay, if A is equal to 1, and I substitute that in, 2 times 1 will give me C. So C is equal to 2. All right. Well, look at this one. 3A equals D. If A is equal to 1, 3 times 1 will give me D. All right, so that's 3. And now I look to see, look at the equations that will help me solve for B. Okay, I have 2. I'm going to pick the last one because it's less work. B equals 3C. C is equal to 2. So B is equal to 3 times 2, which will give me 6. All right. My variables all have numbers now. They're all integers or whole numbers. So guess what? These are my coefficients. 1, 6, 2, and 3. So 1, 6, 2, 3 are the coefficients that balance the equation. If you want to check yourself, you can do a quick little inventory. Your R's and your P's. Al, SO4, H, and O. So there's 2 Als here. There's 2 Als here. You got 3 SO4s, 3 SO4s here. Coefficients are multiplied by the things. 6 times 2, you got 12 hydrogens here. You have 6 plus 6, which is 12. You have 6 oxygens here. 2 times 3, which is 6. And you are balanced. Okay? All right, let's look at another example. All right, so here I have my compounds, and the first thing I'm going to do is assign variables for each one. So NCl3 is going to be A, H2O is B, HClO is C, and NH3 is D. All right, so that part is done. Now I move to the next part where I'm like, okay, let me see my N. Uh-oh, sorry about that, guys. I knew it was drying out, but I didn't think it would dry out that quickly. All right, so N, okay, is going to be, there's 1 under A. I don't have any more, so that's going to equal the number that I have on the product side, which is under D, and there is 1. All right, I'm going to do the same thing for Cl. There's 3 under A, so it's going to be 3A. I don't have any more on the reactant side, so I go to the product side. I have 1 under C. So I'm like, okay, cool. H, 2 under B. So 2B equals C and D. So there's 1 under C, and there's 3 with D. Okay? And then the O's, B, because it's just one of them, equals C. All right, so here we go. I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, we can do this. So we go A, B, C, and D. All right, so looking at this, I need to make one of these equal to the number 1. And just looking at my equations, if I make A equal to 1, okay, and I substitute it in, if A is equal to 1, then D is equal to 1. Like, okay. If A is equal to 1 and I substitute it in here, 3 times 1 equals C. So C is equal to 3. And then, you know what, I'm going to go difficult, okay? So to figure out B, all right, it says 2B is equal to C, which is 3, plus 3 times D, which is 3 times 1. So 2B is equal to 6. Okay, and so B is equal to 3. And so they're all whole numbers, and they become the coefficients 1, 3, 3, and of course the other understood 1. All right, so let's do one more, and I want you guys to work this one with me. Okay, so here we go. Here is another example. Al plus O2 yields Al2O3. All right, so the first thing I want you to do is write the variables. All right, so take some time and write your variables. All right, did you get A, B, and C? Great. Okay, because it's just 3 compounds. You got aluminum, oxygen, and aluminum oxide. Okay, so let us go through and create our equations. So the first one we're going to do is aluminum. All right. So why don't you figure out what the equation is and come back and see if you got it correct. All right. So you should have A, because there's only one aluminum under A. You don't have any more on your reactant side. And then on the product side, you have 2 aluminum atoms under C. So for aluminum, is A equals 2C. Did you guys get that? If not, let me know. All right, we're going to do the same thing for O. So why don't you figure out your equation and then come back and see if you got it right. All right, so for O, on the reactant side, you have 2 oxygens under B, so that's going to be 2B. And you have 3 under C. All right, so 2B equals 3C. All right, so those are the 2 equations that we're dealing with. And so we're going to rewrite our variables. Okay, now I want you to look at your 2 equations and see if you can figure out which one should be the number 1. Is it A, B, or C? Pause the tape, figure it out, and then start it back up to see if you got it right. All right, for me, I chose C to be number 1, okay, because A is equal to 2 times 1. All right, and if I do that, I'm like, okay, no fractions, because I'm trying not to get a fraction. But if I have to get a fraction, we can figure out how to get rid of it. So A is equal to 2. All right, then I'm going to plug this in. I'm going to plug in C to figure out what B is. So 2B is equal to 3 times 1, because C is equal to 1. B is equal to 3 over 2. All right, so I'm looking at this and I got 2, 3/2, and 1. Well, here's the thing. All right, we're not going to use fractions for our coefficients in our balanced equation. If we were, then this would be fine. But since we're not, we got to get rid of the fraction that we have here. So what I need to do is figure out, what do I multiply 3/2 by to get a whole number? And if you said 2, then you are correct. So 3/2 times 2 equals 3. But there's this funny thing about math. What you do to one thing, you got to do to the other ones. So this has to be multiplied by 2, and this has to be multiplied by 2. So this is going to be 4, and this is going to be 2. So your coefficients are going to be 4, 3, and 2. All right. If you have any questions, you can comment below this video. If you like what you saw here, please like this video and subscribe to my channel.